Good morning. So,
good morning.
we are with architect Osae Addo. Good morning.
Good morning.
And thank you very much for allowing us into your beautiful home.
It's about sharing. It's about sharing.
Good.
So welcome.
Thank you. Well, I want to talk about a number of things. We'll be moving between perhaps from the general to the specific. First of all, I mean, the research that I'm doing, these videos are not necessarily an active part of the research, but I want to tie them in anyway. It's on something called the creative economy, which is the idea that as the world develops, we are going to move into a stage where symbolic goods are going to be the dominant items, market items.
Right.
I mean, architecture, I think, is a famous example of these symbolic goods. How do you see generally the place of architecture in the Ghanaian economy?
Well, I think to me it's it's broader than architecture. I think I see the role of culture and design and how that can be used to empower people, to define a people, and most importantly to inspire a people.
Yeah.
And I think that architecture plays a critical role, as with art and the crafts and so forth, in developing an identity for.
Yeah, I'm sure you say all of that
for a country, but architecture.
Are we using it enough in Ghana
no,
today?
Absolutely not. I think in most parts of Africa, it's become an afterthought. If you look at, let's tie it into architecture. To me, what we are doing really is focusing on buildings, but architecture, it's more than just edifice. It's about how you imbue culture and the spirit of a people into the built environment. And it's not only about the enclosed environment, the enclosed buildings, but also the outdoor spaces, which I think is what we should be focusing even more on. How do we create parks and open space where people and families can congregate and meet and share? So to me, I think architects and architecture should be refocused towards.
Let me go back to the point you were making about not just architecture, but culture and design.
Absolutely.
What's the relationship? What is design? What is design?
Well, I think design is the ability of to be able to create solutions for the use of humanity. It's about creating very contextual, specific, often innovative, and I coined a word recently which is innovative, where we use innovative, native solutions to solve our problems, rather than importing lock, stock and barrel things which haven't worked. We know haven't worked in the West, yet we bring them here at great expense, and often rejected by us because it is not of us.
That's very interesting.
I think that it's not only the design aspect, but what kind of a design are we trying to implement here? I think that it should be context based. It should be based on local materials, and so forth. So it should be by us for us, basically.
That's interesting.
By us and for us.
I'm quite interested in that because it's about the third time I've heard similar arguments from creative people in Ghana. Kofi Ansan, the fashion designer, has what he calls tropical hardware.
That's right.
And it's not just a sub-label in this. He has very clear philosophical ideas about that. Joe Jackson, who I've worked with on his software.
Yes, absolutely, Joe.
They have a concept of tropical tolerance.
That's right.
And so on and so forth. So that we have to, part of design is localizing.
Absolutely. It's so important.
Localizing with an international flavor.
Well, the magic about Africa as a whole is that we're a hybrid. We've been colonized and been exposed to the best of the West, and we also have our indigenous qualities and knowledge base. So it's not one or the other, but how do you blend using our indigenous as a basis and then tagging on, of course, the tried and tested a Western approach, which will be sustainable in the long term for our benefit and not for that of the West.
I mean, it's a similar idea to what the African Regent Hotel calls Afropolitan.
Yes.
Canoon magazine, I noticed, has imported a South African expression about blacks and so on and so forth. But the point is, But my difficulty with these things is that
It
most of the
has to be
time,
more than skin deep. It has to be more than
beyond skin deep, they are bloody expensive.
Well, I think that you see, you need to create the market base of volume for price points to actually come down. If you look at, for example, bamboo flooring, bamboo is supposed to be a cheap product, but because the demand isn't as huge yet, it becomes a novelty item and hence
More expensive.
But it's just a matter of time. We have to keep doing it.
So
And
you
then
need to achieve a critical volume.
we have to show that it works, prove that it works. We have to create a demand where people love it and they take it as norm and not some. The funny thing about all of this is the Western idioms have become the new local kind of a context. For example, a cement. People actually believe that cement is a local product.
Yeah.
It is not. If you try to introduce let's say,
Portland
cement, if you try to introduce brick or other soil-based products, they think it's a foreign thing, it's an odd thing. But this is how we used to be. So we have to really. But the challenge to all this is that we have to build enough workable examples for people to embrace it.
We don't have sufficient.
There's not that a critical mass yet.
So we are sitting in your beautiful house with lots of local material and so on and so forth. I remember there have been various public efforts. In fact, I think there was a PNDC secretary, a guy who started at Denta, I suspect, who became quite famous for trying to do these things.
Yes.
But a lot of these things have not succeeded.
Yes. Well, I think that it's also in the structure of the groups working behind these things. If you bring a Spanish firm to try and localize,
which we have in
which
the
we have in the
Legon
past,
project.
it's just not sustainable. And also, most of these products require too much imported content.
Okay.
It has to be more indigenous based.
So
And,
if I understand you correctly,
and empowering, people who are Ghanaian, who are local, to actually produce it to feed this new market rather than having a centralized plant.
Are you saying the official projects we've had trying to use local content have themselves used too much foreign content?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look, when you go to Building Research Institute in Kumasi, they have pozzolana and they make bricks. What they cry for is the demand, where government projects, for example, they should be mandated for them to use this. Now, when you do that, you create, they'll be forced to expand, partnering with private sector, and then whole new industries are spawned because there is a demand. Now, let's face it, I don't really believe in the government-led approach, but in Ghana and most parts of Africa, government is the largest employer and
purchaser
and paymaster. But I think that when that happens, I think there should be an affirmative action of sorts, where government gives tax breaks and so forth to people like us who are willing to build out of these things, so we don't pay duties on things that we bring, into this country to.
Now, let's come back to your house. Did I read somewhere that the house ended up being cheaper than a similar house built with the regular materials?
Absolutely. This house is, although the timber prices have actually increased. The cost of a house is not only the material but the labor, time, and cost.